Who Watches the Rewatchers, a Buffy rewatch podcast.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to Who Watches the Rewatchers, our podcast, rewatching through Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the only Sarah Michelle Gellar ordained to watch. No, wait, that's not true. Anyway, it's the best podcast probably ever in the history of podcasts. How you doing, Alan?
Oh, I'm doing great, man. It's the week before class starts at the university where I teach, and so it's mass pandemonium around here. But other than that, it is wonderful.
Yeah, well, we had a little break in the heat where we're at, and so it's getting a little nice. And my daughter, I mean, it's still August, but my daughter says to me the other day, she goes, "Oh, Daddy's in his moods because I have the fall and harvest and pumpkin spice, whatever, apple cider candles burning." And all of a sudden, I'm trying to show them Halloween-related movies and things, and she goes, "Oh, here we are." And my other daughter, my other daughter, whose birthday is the 13th of September, she thinks that's the official beginning to Halloween. And so every year on that day, part of her birthday is that we decorate outside. So,
she and I share a birthday. Nice. She and I share a birthday, the 13th of September as well.
That'll be on a Friday this year, Friday the 13th. So.
That's right. I'm going to be...
Well, today's episode, we're going to talk about the episode we just watched called The Puppet Show, which is episode 9 of season 1 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Alan, this is a straight-up horror comedy, I think.
Yes.
You think about that. The horror com genre, it is silly, and it's got some good humor to it, and of course, it's supposed to have spooky themes. Yeah, why don't you dive in with the storyline? We'll just chat about it as we go.
Sure, absolutely. It opens on the students at Sunnydale High School preparing for a talent show that Giles has been assigned to direct and manage. He's been
that's a lot of good fun there. That's just a lot of good fun for the Scooby gang to make fun of him, because he's the least likely person to be a part of such festivities, and he's all sorts of put out, and but he's there under duress.
They're under duress. And the Scooby Gang's making fun of him. And then they encounter the new principal.
Principal Snyder. Yes. And boy, he's just, I don't know the actor. I guess his name is Armin Shimmerman. He's really good in this role.
Yeah, he's most famously Quark from Deep Space Nine, Star Trek.
Yeah, the ears.
That's right. And my wife loved him as Principal Snyder, and actually met him at a convention recently, and fawned over him, and I think stroked his ego pretty good.
Okay, that's another story for another time. About that convention. Well, in the beginning of the show, as they're all kind of there, they're watching some of the acts. There's a funny bit with, or not funny, a kind of a blackboard screeching, kind of scratching sounds with Cordelia Chase singing a Whitney Houston song. Of course, she can't sing.
Greatest love of all.
It's terrible, but she doesn't know any better.
Yes.
And then they watch this student, Morgan, and the red shirt of the week, I guess, the kid they just introduced for the narrative. And Morgan has got an old school ventriloquist dummy named Sid. And and it doesn't look great, right? The act at first doesn't look great at all, because it's just Morgan. Morgan is both mouthing his lines and mouthing Sid's lines, and then it evolves. But
that's right.
But we also see that there's a ballet dancer named Emily who's a part of this as well. And I believe it cuts away from the talent show, and we follow her into I guess one of the locker room again. We keep going to the locker room in season 1. Kind of strange.
Yes.
Kind of creepy.
Yeah. There's some locker room stuff that comes up in I want to say it's either season 2 or 3. Which season is Reptile Boy in?
Oh, I'm not going to recall that right now, but
yeah. Well, anyway, we'll get there when we get there. But yeah, the locker room seems to be a place for nefariousness in Buffy. Absolutely.
And I guess that that kind of holds up for how. I mean, it's pretty par for the course. But as she's there in the locker room changing, there's this whole voice, a demonic voice that whispers, I will be flesh. And that's interesting. That's like the notion there that whatever this is going to become incarnate.
Right.
I will be flesh. So yeah, it's very incarnational language. Oh, I also before we talk about that, because obviously she's gonna be axed here in a minute, but I did want to say a hilarious line from the Principal Snyder as he was just kind of giving his little speech about who he is and why things are going to be running as a tighter ship at the school. As he talks about the principal that comes before him, he says, but he was eaten. And then he keeps talking about his touchy-feely liberalism of the formal principal who was eaten. And then he says, Sunnydale was felt and touched for the last time. And I felt the creepiness of sexual predation in the language,
Absolutely.
So, and then I also wanted to say that during their observations of Morgan, Willow says something like, I think dummies are cute. And that's funny to me because, of course, at this point, she has a crush on Xander, who is sort of their human dummy. And so
that's right.
Kind of funny. Anyway, so back to it. I will be flesh. And then something bad is happening to Emily, the ballet dancer, right?
Yeah, but we see it we don't see it. It's off screen, whatever happens.
Off screen, whatever happens. That's right. Yeah.
No. So then we go to the intro credits, and then we're back in the talent show, and the gang is still talking to our puppeteer.
Yeah.
And he's doing, and they make a joke that he is doing the horny puppet thing. We get it.
Yeah. Yeah. He falls into that very old school ventriloquist thing, and we started to hear the Sid's got that voice. I mean, what would you call that voice? Hey kid, hey broad, like I'm smoking a cigarette, and I've seen the world, kind of. I don't know what that is. Mid-Atlantic, 20th century, kind of almost rough and tumble New York.
Yeah, I don't know what to call it either, but what it always reminds me of is like the Sam Spade kind of vibe.
Yeah.
The noir detective kind of vibe.
That's right. And she came in my life, this broad, that Dane. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they're trying to figure out, because now there's this, I think Snyder says I will run a clean, orderly school, and then it's a cut to a screen, which is always, and that's where we know that Emily's body has been found, and there's a knife and everything. And the Scoobies then start to debate, whether this killer is a human because of the knife or if it's a demon. And in my immediate response in my notes, I'm like, well, how is it not just obvious that it's the ventriloquist dummy? In my mind, knowing what they know about how the demonic and the spirits work, it's got to be the dummy.
Sure.
What I mean? But it's
totally.
On their radar. So stupid.
Well, they're probably in denial about the idea. Like right now, you got to remember this is all new to all of them, with the exception of Giles. So Giles doesn't have an excuse, but the others, I can understand them thinking that, it's just a sketchy wooden dummy as opposed to, something demonic. Because at this point, all they've seen are vampires, witches, demons. Have they seen anything else? Has anything else been out there? We haven't seen an inanimate object. Well, I guess we did by way of the book.
If I saw any of it, I would be suspicious of a dummy. But
yeah, sure.
That's me.
But you have seen that kind of stuff. Is it part of the mythos of the show that any of these guys watch horror fiction?
Okay, I'll take that point. I have no clue what they've been watching, except for later I find out that Xander likes Amy Yip, and so I have an idea what he's been watching. But let me just cut to, because they start going around trying to find. They're assuming that it's somebody associated with the talent show, and so they split up and they go doing their investigations. And it cuts in and out between that and Morgan, who's talking to Sid. And he's always doing it with Sid sitting on a stool looking at him, and they're not together like a ventriloquist's. A hand is not in the dummy.
Right.
And I just wrote, why are you always talking to the dummy in public places? Doesn't want to be found out, yet he almost gets walked in on, right? Because he's doing it places he shouldn't be doing it, which seems metaphorical maybe for other things, but I won't go there for now. That's what's happening. That's what's happening at this point in time. And at this time, really, the show is leading us to believe that it is the dummy. The dummy's creepy. The dummy clearly operates as a sentient being separate from Morgan. And so
Absolutely.
obviously from the viewer's perspective, it's the dummy. The dummy is it. Right?
100%.
Yeah.
And the gang's even beginning to be suspicious of the dummy, right?
That's right.
And so Buffy goes to try to examine the scene of the crime, and she runs into Principal Snyder, and we get a great little Snyder scene.
Yeah, there's even a part where he's so in the dark physically. He's the way the camera is. He's not lit really, except for the light behind him, and his ears protrude so far from his head. All you can see is like the light going through the skin of his ears. It makes him very menacing, which is great, because he's not a very menacing. He doesn't have a menacing stature, but they have a way of making him seem reptilian and sort of slimy.
That's exactly right.
Very effective. It is the way he delivers lines for sure. Yeah.
No, I think he is fantastic in that role. I mean, he's the best principal they could have had. And I heard an interview with him where he talked about this. He did this while he was on Deep Space Nine. These two shows ran at the same time.
Oh wow.
So they actually to have him on Buffy, they had to work around his Star Trek schedule.
Yeah, because I think he was more of a principal character in that, wasn't he?
Yes. He was one of the main 7 characters on Deep Space Nine, as opposed to being sort of what would you call this, like a side character, ancillary character, or something like that.
Something like that. Well, as we're starting to get the pieces of the puzzle, you know that through the arguments between Morgan and Sid, something strange is afoot there, and then you're starting to see the principals form. It's sort of another menace forming in the life of Buffy and the Scoobies. But this Sid puppet begins to start doing things away from Morgan on his own, right? Like you start to see more of him. In fact, there's a point in time where Buffy's in her bedroom at night, and Sid the puppet is in there. And she will later describe it as like, well, no, she won't describe it. She's describing what happened, like this little, puppet scurrying around. And Xander keeps saying, like a cat. Because anyone who's ever had a cat, it feels like a cat jumps on you in your sleep and kind of runs around, screams out ears. Totally. But Buffy's right. It really was Sid. At that point, I just wrote down this. There's this at this point, thinking that Sid is the villain. And spoiler to everyone, if you haven't watched it yet, you know he's not. But at this point, thinking he's the villain, that gives you some real Chucky vibes because and the way his body moves, it gives you some real Chucky vibes, but also gives you Hellraiser vibes because at the very beginning, you have this notion that there's this I will be flesh, and so they're having to take the life of people is what it seems like is happening. Will somehow allow this inanimate object that's been possessed by a spirit to then that spirit to take on human flesh once more, which happens. It's one of the things in Hellraiser. Of course, that's an S&M horror film, which is crazy, wild, bonkers to me, but that happens. So I was like, really has some Hellraiser meets Chucky vibes at that point. But the thing that really gets me going on this kind of the believability of this storyline, I think the most unbelievable thing of everything that we see is not that there is a possessed doll. I mean, I think most of us who've seen a doll know that most of them are possessed. I mean, they're crazy. Dolls, right?
Sure.
But I think the thing that is the most bananas is that Morgan is sitting in like class and the doll's just out on his desk.
Yes.
And like the teacher doesn't care until
the teacher doesn't care. That's true.
Starts talking back. I'm like, that is one permissive teacher.
So on this note, I gotta tell you a side story very quickly. I have a collaborator, a creative collaborator that I work with a lot. His name is Tim Price. He's the author of Big in Japan, which is the book about a rock band that fight kaiju and a giant cowboy robot that I illustrate. And
it's a great title.
Big in Japan, yeah. He did a great job with that. He lives in Minnesota, and every once in a while I have to go out to Minnesota and spend a few days at his place to help him work on whatever crazy project he's come up with. And the room in his house that I stay in is the room where his wife's doll collection is kept.
Yeah.
And there are literally like, I don't know, 50 dolls in this room. from like 1940 and earlier. And it is like one of the creepiest experiences of my life. And I go through it approximately once every 2 years.
Yeah, there is like a word, I can't recall the word, but there's a thing that makes us creeped out by the approximation of a human face.
Oh, right. I know exactly what you're talking about. The Uncanny Valley?
Probably, there's something. But it's
something like that. Yeah.
There's a reason why it's a common fear, or it gives us the Wiggins, as Buffy may say.
Well, you know, the next scene that's coming up is one of my favorite scenes of all time, related to the combination of Giles and Cordelia.
Take it away.
Cordelia's coming up to Giles to tell him about all the things that she needs to have different so that she can be successful with this talent show. And Giles is clearly like tired of listening to her. And rather than trying to address any of her fears, he just says, "Your hair," and then he tries to change the subject. Cordelia goes, "There's something wrong with my hair," and she freaks out and she runs away. And then Giles says, "Xander was right."
Yes, I love that. That gave me a nice chuckle. Xander was right. That's right. Yeah, that's a good scene. And there's another great scene too. It's kind of a parallel scene, only it's got heft to it. That's where Buffy, like everyone else, is starting to get on to Morgan. And so she goes to Morgan's locker and she punches in, if you will, with the palm of her hand, his the lock so she can break into it. Trying to get Sid out of the box. And she is confronted by another male authority figure. And so Cordelia is coming to Giles as the authority figure. This time the authority figure is the principal coming to Buffy. So it's this parallel scene.
Yeah, 100%. That's right.
Menacing, because he's like, "I'm on to you," kind of thing. And at the same time, as she's trying to say, "Hey, no, I'm just getting this for my friend," and she looks in the box and Sid is not there whatsoever.
Sid's not there. That's right. Because Xander has taken Sid. Yeah.
And later you hear, well, I don't know exactly the hop, skip, and a jump from this to when Sid tells Morgan that Buffy's the one, but really what we're starting to kind of turn the corner on in the story of the episode is that Sid isn't the one doing the killings, and he's not the one trying to become flesh. There's something different going on. But in order to get there, we have to now people have to listen to the old stand-up comic who's drinking too many scotches and smoking too many cigarettes.
That's right.
No, right. So there's this moment, and we find out a little bit more about who Sid really is.
There's a beautiful scene right before that though, where he tries to attack Buffy. Right, he's on top of her. You see the puppet. It's a very Chucky. What was it? Maybe called Child's Play style scene.
Yeah, I mentioned too soon about the bedroom, but yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So we get the backstory of the puppet. And the reaction of the Scooby Gang to the puppet while the puppet's talking is amazing, because they're just dumbfounded.
Well, in the backstory, it's like he was like a demon hunter, right? That's like his vocation. Like Buffy's a slayer, he's a demon hunter, and in fact he's kind of cursed for some cursed into this dummy form until he kills the last of some seven, like the Brotherhood of Seven, another sort of esoteric gathering of ghouls, I guess, and they're demons who have a desire to harvest the brains and hearts and things of that nature.
Yep.
So he doesn't want to be anymore. I mean, he's not trying to become in flesh. He's trying to let his soul rest. Is that right? Is that how?
That's right. That's how I read it as well.
And he's telling him this. He's telling him his sad backstory, kid. I've seen a lot in the world. You said that the Scoobies are sitting there just like with their mouths agape, just like
yes.
But yeah. I guess that would be. That was some good humor. That would be an uncanny.
This episode overall has got some really good, funny moments. I mean, I'm looking forward to you telling us how it all ranks out compared to other episodes. But this one definitely isn't one that I think has anything to do with like the larger Buffy mythos or anything like that. It's a really good character piece to sort of understand Schneider. And frankly, I think we get a little bit more into Giles this episode than we have previously. And the methodology of the Buffy gang gets solidified.
Yeah, I agree. And I wanted to come back. I wanted to piggyback on what you say about what it is about. I think Giles, it is that line that experience with Cordelia when he says Xander was right. Like it kind of pierces, that little interchange pierces through some of that kind of shell that he has.
Yes.
And he also listens. He also, he's clearly not just ignoring everything that the kids tell him, and
Yep.
to see him smile the way he smiles and laughs, it just kind of,
Yes.
it humanizes him a lot.
He humanizes them. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Which needed to happen so that we would really care when it looks like he's about to get his brain cut out.
Exactly right. Yeah. So he becomes the target of the demon, which we have just completely overlooked and didn't speak about. But there's another person who's involved in the talent show, and it's a magician. And I think there's some really funny bits where the magician is trying to do magic at times when he's being interviewed by the Scooby Gang, and he says, "Take a card," and he goes, "Not that one, take this one," or
yeah, right.
When he tries to make a person disappear in the box, and he goes, "You're supposed to get out of there." Like
yeah, right.
The tricks aren't working, and he's kind of just puts his head down like a sad Charlie Brown, and it's kind of sweet and kind of funny, and so that's a little, what's that, like a trick, because that's just a sad high school kid who can't, he really wants to be good at magic but can't, and it's kind of sad. Well, he's actually the demon, and he ends up getting the head of the talent show, Giles, to help him figure out his trick. And it's with this I guess, what's that called? That's called the guillotine. But
guillotine, that's right.
He straps it not around Giles's neck, but just the middle of his cranium, where it open the top of his head. Right. And he's wanting to remove Giles's brain. He needs to find the brain of like somebody who's really, really intelligent. And that's who the Scoobies kind of figure all this out about the mythos of the demons. They're like, who's really, really smart? And they assume that the demon is going to go after Willow, right?
That's right.
Because she's their brainiac, but they've overlooked the fact that Giles is very, very bright, and then they're there to kind of help save the day, which is kind of an interesting, or like kind of humorous kind of action scene, I think, because
it is very.
It includes this kid who's got a demon and somebody in a guillotine, but also Sid the dummy. So yeah, that's a little funny. I mean, it's just really hard to make a dummy menacing, when the dummy has a knife and it looks like it can barely hold the knife.
That's right. But ultimately, Buffy takes him out, and Sid. I was actually unclear. So Sid dies at the end.
Yeah, he gives up the ghost, as they would say. Yeah, it says here, the way the Wikipedia recap says is, Sid tells Buffy that once they kill the demon, he will die, since his human body has long since crumbled to dust and bone. Like, maybe there's nowhere else for it to go.
Right.
They also found out along the way that this Morgan character had brain cancer.
Yes.
Therefore, the demon should now be looking for someone with a healthy, smart brain, like that person. That Giles. So that's the reason why it can't be Morgan.
Yeah.
So there we are. The fight is happening right before the actual curtain is supposed to rise, right, for this talent show.
That's right.
You know what, Alan? I'm just getting ahead of myself all over today. Let me just stop and say that one of the ways that they're going to try to figure out who the villain is after they know that Sid is not the villain is they were encouraged to have Giles take a lap with all the performers in what they call a power circle.
Sure.
And he's like, what's a power circle? And they're like, you get everyone jazzed up for the event right before the curtain opens. And whoever's not there is the bad guy. Well, everyone is there, but it's the weakest. And it's just a very humorous attempt at this like stodgy British sort of character trying to do something like, come on, you can do it. Power circle. But anyway, so that happens, which is a really funny moment. But the fight then takes place as the curtain is down, and on top of the guillotine, the one who ends up actually getting their brain cut into was the demon himself, not Sid, not Willow, and not Giles, who was in the guillotine. And right then and there, Sid's body goes, and there it is. It's over. The scene is over, except for what happens? Remember? The curtains rise.
No, I don't. Tell me.
The curtains rise.
Oh, the curtains rise. That's right.
And they're all just kind of there, and the crowd is full. Parents are there. Principal Snyder's in the front row. There's somebody.
That's right.
Body there on the guillotine. There's a puppet with a knife. And all of them like we're in fighting poses. And they've been hearing it, they've been hearing, and now they're seeing it, and it's just dead quiet. And then
And
Snyder
Snyder
said,
says what?
"I don't get it. Is it avant-garde?"
And then
It's
we
hilarious.
cut to the most important scene in the entire thing to me, which
the
is Buffy and Xander and Willow doing their talent show act, right? Very badly. We're like it's through the post credits scene, right?
It is through the
And
credits.
they are terrible.
They're terrible at dramatic monologue or whatever. They said that's the best way of getting out of a talent show is to do a drama, because it doesn't take talent to do drama. They said it's a very funny joke. I mean, it's full of jokes. Yes, and they're they're phoning it in for sure. Like, I can't even recall what it was from. But yeah, so I think your assessment. Let's go back to your assessment of this one being like it doesn't advance the mythos,
right?
Not even fit. I mean, it is a monster of the week, but it doesn't feel like it. It feels a little different to me.
It does,
and I think it's because of what you said. I mean, it does. It advances relationships of the Scoobies and their kind of the way they operate. It advances Giles. It introduces Snyder. So yeah, I think that's a good read that you have about that. What do you think is the metaphor? Since we talk about the sun, what do you think the metaphor is about teenage fears and things?
This one, even though it's a fun episode, I'm not sure that it has a super clear metaphor. I think that it's something about. I think the talent show as the central thing is in there somewhere. But I don't know that I really have a read on what the metaphor is. Here's the only thing that I know that I think they were really trying to accomplish. Okay, Whedon is famously a big Shakespeare nut.
Mm-hmm.
Like he
in his home.
Have you ever seen his adaptation of Much Ado About Nothing? Okay,
yes.
You have. Yeah. So the way that got put together was he has been having weekly Shakespeare readings at his house with all of his like buddy actors and producers and stuff. And so they do Shakespeare reads or whatever, and then they talk about it and think about different ways it can be executed and all that kind of stuff. And it's sort of like his version of a book club or something, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that this was a way for him to do the Shakespearean play within a play idea. But within the Buffy mythos. So it's very much that idea of how can we let the drama of the show be the thing that sort of propels the story that's happening around the inner show. And I think that's a very Shakespeare idea. I don't think that he perfects that idea in this episode. I think that he perfects that idea in Once More with Feeling.
Okay, I can see what you're saying. Definitely, I think for him it does a lot of his. I mean, I think it plays into very Whedon-esque sort of cheekiness.
Yes.
Self-awareness. Misdirection. I think it's a misdirection episode in a lot of ways. I mean, if there is a teen angsty thing here, I think very much it could simply be about. I mean, I don't think it's a metaphor so much as it's just the talent show itself.
Sure.
That experience of being performative. I mean, I think it plays on smaller fears. I mean, even the way that Sid comes into Buffy's room and even tries to attack her in a small way, just like being interrupted in your room by something uncanny or whatnot. That's just little small spooky things, but not a big metaphor for teen angst and drama.
Sure.
I mean, a new principal, a new authority figure, but yeah. Sure. I agree that I don't tease one out that's as easy to see. I think it's the maybe some point the whole episode is to get Snyder to say I don't get it. Is it avant-garde? Because it just really sets the entire scene for a stage for him and his character.
Yes.
Vox, as I've enjoyed now looking over Wikipedia to kind of see their take on stuff. I like how they do, and I cite it every time we talk, how they talk about the reception of each episode. And Vox ranked this one 113 out of 144 episodes.
Okay.
They thought it was a very weird episode, is what they felt.
Okay.
Seeing some praise from other places calling it a good horror comedy, some people calling it inventive. The AV Club said it was just a C+, calling it reasonably entertaining. There's it plays up the old killer dummy routine, they say, but with some twists that they found interesting.
Sure.
Mild praise. Yeah. So
I think that they recapitulate some of the ideas from this and more successfully in some ways in the Angel episode Smile Time. Do you know that one?
yeah.
Because it's got the same we're dealing with puppets and possessed artifacts and all that kind of stuff. I think there's some more of that going on there. But yeah, I don't think I have too much more to say about this one though, unfortunately, because it is such a standalone.
Yeah.
And it has such a lack of metaphor.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you want to add about the because you're always so good at talking about like how the spiritual dimensions of these things play into mythology. Is there anything that you can say about that?
Well, I would simply say that I don't think they're working with a deep theological, mythological, metaphysical understanding of anything. I think they're just doing story tropes, but they have the idea that some demon hunter is a spirit trapped in a dummy's body, and that there's some sort of it continues the same metaphysic that you'll see later in the show where vampires are dead, soulless creatures where demons have set up shop, and that the soul is something completely separate from the body. That's a very in a lot of ways this harkens back to Plato, where what we call soul, material world is kind of it's somehow distinct from the external.
Sure.
It gets punched up in the modern period with Descartes, who had like this self and the extended version of us, which is kind of our physicality, and phrases I already said gave up the ghost, like this idea that we are the ghost inside of a machine follows from Descartes. That's not a traditional like Christian understanding of soul, although it seems like it, because Christian people have thought about soul body stuff within that cultural milieu.
I see.
It harkens back more to Plato, and in ways it touches Plato, in ways it touches Descartes, in ways it touches a lot of other strange esoteric groups like Gnostics and Manichees. But so like the idea that the identity of Sid was somehow an incorporeal thing that could be locked in a cage called this dummy, to me might sound to a lot of people like the way we perceive the world to be, but I find it deeply problematic, actually. So I mean, it's terrifying, because it means that you are not somebody in any sense. And I think there's freedom in realizing that you both, and well, at least the way I understand it, is not just that I have a body, but that I also am the body. And it's not just that I have a soul, I'm a soul. So I think there's an integrity to us. So I think my physical life affects my interior life and vice versa. So I think that becomes something that can be played out all throughout Buffy and the Angel the Whedon verse.
Sure.
But there's nothing that's to me that interesting about this particular episode.
Sure.
Now,
sure.
I'll say, where do we go from here? Like they say in What's More for Revealing, I will say that the next episode 10, we do come back to finding out what's going on with the Master and back to that original big narrative of the Buffyverse. So we're going to get our toe back into that world, if you will.
Well, yeah. In addition to that, I wonder if they didn't put these episodes out of order. Like, I think that the next episode should have come before this one, because in the next episode, we find out that Buffy is scared of dummies.
So, like, maybe as they released them, they changed it around for one reason or okay. That's interesting. I'll keep an eye out for that when we watch it.
And in the next episode, we find out that Willow is scared of crowd or performance.
Okay, those things might have been interesting to know before this one.
Yeah, exactly. So I think in the writer's room they had that all going, and I don't know if there was like an out of order thing, but I do think that from the perspective of helping us with character development, that would have been better to do. But I wonder if there's some other reason that the next episode has to be the next episode, and I don't remember that, so I can look forward to watching it next week.
Yeah, I obviously I've never worked in television or network television at all, obviously, so. I do know that when when Whedon's Firefly came out, it suffered from the way that the networks released it, and when they released it in the first episode, like basically an epic movie length thing. I mean, it suffered.
Yeah, the first episode is an epic movie length thing, and they released it last.
They released it last. That's right. So thank you for nailing down the specifics on that. I just knew in my memory that they released it in a way that would affect the show negatively.
That's right. Yeah, they released the train job first, which is technically either the second or the third episode, depending on whether you're counting the movie length thing as one episode or two episodes, you know. Yeah. And the reason they did that was because, according to the network, they didn't think that Mal came off as heroic enough in the pilot movie, and so they wanted him they felt that it was more important that he be seen as some sort of Han Solo-esque kind of character right off the bat, as opposed to basically the opening scene of the big pilot of Firefly. His character literally loses the war.
Loses the war, right? Yeah. And yeah, it's one of those things I was told before, that a camel is a horse designed by a committee.
Yeah, that's right. And so it's very likely that something got moved around for some other reason. It might be just as simple as let me see how many episodes we have left this season. We've got it might be as simple as they were trying to separate the big mythos episodes so that they staggered in a way that they felt like drove it to the final episode of the season.
Right.
I don't know.
Right. Well, we'll get there and figure it out when we do. That's
exactly right. And the episode we're doing next is Nightmares, where we find out these things about both Buffy, Willow, and we find out that what Xander's big fears are. So there you go.
All right, my friend. Well, good seeing Buffy with you and good talking about it. Until next time.